Hello there, and welcome to a walkthrough for Spectrum mod for Fabric 1.18. Because me and a friend of mine found this mod a little bit difficult to understand, and the information on it is not very thorough. The CurseForce page says it's a very extensive wiki. Yeah, there's not that much information on there. Not in terms of what to do next. They like to give hints and clues, but they don't actually give you anything reasonable until you go to their Discord to force you to interact. So this is intended to be kind of a guidebook. Now, one of the things that actually helped us out quite a bit was the fact that this mod was included in the All of Fabric 5 mod pack. And this quest book that we got included in the last update actually made a huge difference on how much we could get done, because it's much more extensive than anything else we'd seen up to this point. So if we quickly open the book, this is the roadmap. This is the very basic roadmap. And I know that there is a new update because they've recently updated to 1.3.3 for 1.18.2. Yeah, but looking at the changelogs, there are very few things that have changed in regards to actual progression through this mod. So up until that point, there's going to be very little difference between this one and that one. Now, the first couple of things you take note of is there's a few things in here that the text is all kind of scrambly, and that's because we haven't discovered them yet. So we're going to start off by, first of all, clicking the check, and getting the book, which is 100% necessary for the rest of it. But the first step in this mod is to actually collect the 2 additional types of geodes that spawn in the world with the mod. There's now a citrine and a topaz. So we're going to grab those shards and put them directly into our inventory. Okay, so now we've made some decent progression. This is where the discover as you go for this mod kind of disappears. From this point forward, it is no longer you go through and discover as you play the game, which is what the developers intend. It's you have to be intentional about the way you handle it. So now that we've gotten this far, if we go into the advancements menu, you can see now there is a spectrum tab, and it asks you to create a pigment pedestal. Now, to make these pedestals, you need very specific recipe types. They all look basically the same, depending on if you do the topaz or the amethyst or the citrine variant. Now, when I generated my world, citrine was very difficult to find. I have found only one citrine geode in about a 2,000 block radius. So I hope you have better luck than I did. I don't know if the generation of these geodes are biodependent, but it does not appear to be. I think it's just random. The amethyst ones generate like normal amethyst geodes, and so they're pretty easy to find. The topaz ones I found everywhere. So we're just going to create an amethyst pedestal, which takes polished basalt and polished calcite. The polished basalt comes from taking the smooth basalt that appears around the geodes and smelting it to get the polished basalt variant for Spectrum. Now, the thing you need to bear in mind is that if you have a mod pack like this, there are 2 or 3 different kinds of both polished basalt and polished calcite, that if you use the wrong one, even though it says polished, it still won't work. It has to be the Spectrum specific variant. This mod does not yet allow the use of blocks from other mods, and maybe it will down the road, but right now it doesn't. So we're going to quickly throw the items in here and make pedestal. You can see a whole new stuff gets opened up here. Okay, so I don't know if this is an all fabric thing or a general mod thing, but I really like this. If you hold on sneak and right click, it'll take you to the entry about that particular item, which is fantastic. So the next order of business is we need to upgrade this table to the next variant. And this is where this book becomes very necessary because it gives you the patterns, what you need for altars. So if we come in here and we look for pedestal CMY upgrade, the first step is to put all the shards in the table in this specific order, and then we can pull it out. Now we can just simply, this is where the guidebook becomes very handy, because one of the things you get for completing the advancement by creating the pedestal is an anvil. Now, this is important because if you look at the next step in this is called smashing. So now you have to make dust. Now you have to turn the shards into dust, and you do that by dropping an anvil on them. So we're going to just take some of this polished basalt. We're going to throw down a couple shards, and we're going to drop an anvil right there. Look at that. And now we have amethyst powder. And you need to do that to all of them. You're going to go through a lot of these shards for this entire thing. So locating geodes that you can completely clean out and farm is going to be very helpful. So now we're going to assume that you've done all this already. So we're just going to grab, once you have crushed all of the powder, or all the shards, once you have crushed all the shards into powder, you can now start at the next step, which is converting this and upgrading it to the next piece. But before you can do that, you need to use the book. If you come in here to the upgrade, go next, and now you have this focus pedestal, which this is nice. I like this option a lot. It gives you a hologram, kind of like Lightmatica, of what blocks need to go where. You can put it where you want it, even on the ground, and you right click to anchor it. Now at the top, it tells you how many blocks are correct and how many blocks are incorrect. It even tells you what the block is if you can get close enough to hover over it. And it's flashing back and forth because it can use either the polished basalt or the polished calcite variant, depending on what you've got available to you. Again, you need to make sure you're using the variant that is specific to the Spectrum mod. And last but not least, the table. So now what we do is put the shards in here in order. And you know you've got the right thing in here when you start seeing this nifty little like animation. You add a button to the front of the pedestal and bear in mind that upgrading the table the first time takes a very long time. It's a good 40 seconds to a minute. Then you're going to want to leave the button on there because almost every single recipe requires some kind of power to the table. Now, this is where some of the genius of this mod actually starts to shine, because one of the recipes you can add to this allows the automation of items, which this is pretty cool. This is really cool, but I haven't really played with it very much to understand how this works. This is where the learning curve and the difficulty of this mod really starts to peak. With this advancement, what happens is now there are ore in the world that was always there that you couldn't see, but now you can. They all had the squiggly text like I showed you earlier with the dice. They all looked like this, but you couldn't tell what they were. I couldn't find any naturally generating in the world, so I just pulled some out of the creative menu. Got a whole bunch of achievements, of which I wish I was recording, but wasn't and missed it. But it was just mostly advancements. You have advanced this, you have advanced that. The same type of stuff you come in here. Hey, look. Basically what it boiled down to. This is also the phase within this mod where you can make pre-enchanted tools. Use the gems and the shards in a very specific order and configuration, and you can get pickaxes and things with looting and fortune and stuff automatically, which is great. Excuse me, I'm trying to work here. The wandering trader suddenly found himself like needing to rush away. Family emergency or something? I don't know. Yeah, ignore the leather in my hotbar. That's not important. At this point, if we come into the book, we can start to see the additional categories are starting to open up. There's a whole bunch of decoration blocks. I actually use these a couple of my builds because they're very, very convenient. We also start to see some of the more redstone components, block placers, calculators, redstone sand, timers. There's wireless redstone components that open up in here too. Compacting chest is really cool. You can fill it full of iron and it will automatically compact them down into iron blocks. It's a great thing to put at the bottom of an iron farm. So anything that gets pushed into the farm automatically gets put into a block form, saves yourself on space. The next step in this process is to make a bottle of fading, which is this recipe right here. So we need fermented spider eyes, blaze powder, and honey bottle, and this should store gems. Put all of these in the pedestal, like so. Press the button. So now this is a very, very, very fascinating item in survival. It's got a really cool sound when you put it down, and you can pick it back up. And it took us a little bit to figure out what this is used for. The only clue that we had was organic matter. So what it took us a little bit to figure out is you can put leaves around it. And it changes them. Now, as you wait for these changes, bear in mind that touching this with anything does damage. It hurts a lot, which is why the bottle's important to pick it up and drop it down. We're going to pick this back up. For the next piece. This is where this book starts to become a bit more useful. If you come back to the main category and go to the entry index, you'll now see a new resource. You can spend items to reveal hints. And now it's telling you you need to go look somewhere, specifically into the swamp. That means it's time for a road trip. So here in the swamp, I have found these reeds. And this is what we need. Now that we have that, our next step is to make more of this and make our first mutated item. And that's going to require a sapling of any kind. We'll just use oak. And we'll use, let's use cyan dye. So we're just going to throw that recipe in here with an oak sapling. Boom. And now we have a cyan sapling. I'm going to grab some bone meal. This is where this makes a very significant alteration to the world. You can fly in any direction. You're going to start seeing strangely colored trees all over the place. Oh, there, right there. This was always a spectrum tree, always going to be a yellow tree, but we couldn't tell until we got far enough in to unlock it. So if we go into this menu, we can now all see the different kinds of wood that we can now pull open and utilize, including the trees and the whole bit. But this is more decor stuff, which is kind of cool. Some of it's really useful. The next step is to actually harvest the leaves to get the pigment from the leaves. We're going to hop back into survival. And now your goal is to fly around the entire world, breaking colored leaves of colored trees to collect all the different kinds of pigment. I just pulled all the dyes into my inventory. I did spend some time flying around. I covered that much space and got 3/4 of them. So they're pretty perfect. They're not hard to find. I just pulled the last 2 or 3 in my inventory just to progress on. Now we've done that, we can progress to the next altar, which is this shrine right here. We need to not only make the shrine, but we have a new shrine structure to create. So we're going to drop this one, right here. And again, it's the same block pellet. They have to be spectrum specific blocks or they don't count. Now, all we have left in this is the fusion shrine, which is 4 of each polished block and 1 of each polished geode block, and then the powder. So triggering of the fusion shrine does one specific thing. It causes it to rain a lot until you finish the ritual. Can only happen on a new moon. But we need a bucket of lava, and we need to throw all the other shards into it. And with this, it's now time to build the next shrine. This one's slightly larger than the other ones. It's got a lot more parts, a lot more components, but it's really not that much more difficult to build. So we'll click on the visualizer and we'll drop it like right. This is what I mean when I say it's going to be constantly raining. And that's how you make it sunny again. There. No more constant rain all the time. Man, that's annoying. So drop the onyx in it. Get a button. Power the thing. And now it's an onyx table. It's time to go back to play with the thing we picked up in the swamp. And you do the same thing with this you do with about everything else. You crush it. And pillar, pillar, pillar. And I'm gonna wreck it. Now, we have this stuff. The quixotic powder is used to make these glow blocks. The glow blocks do put off a light, but not a significant light level. So from a distance, you can see them, but it's not going to stop mob spawning. The pigments are mostly used for these lamps, and there's one for almost every single shade in the entire 16 color spectrum. And these lamps function the same way that a standard redstone lamp does. You need to add power to the lamp to get them to light up. Unfortunately, the light that they put off is not a colored light. It's still a white or yellow light, just like a standard lamp is. It's just a different color on the outside. I failed to mention earlier that the pigment is used for all manners of different types of decoration, including different colored spore blossoms. A lot of the gems are used in different kind of lamps. There's a lot in here that is very cosmetic. With the creation of this altar, a new change has happened in the world, and this one happens in the nether. There's a specific ore named crimtane that you can now see. Just like the Timberstone in the overworld, crimtane is now in the nether. Earlier, we created a bottle of fading. Now it's time to create a bottle of failing, which is spider eyes, crimtane, the quixotic powders, and a bottle of enchanting. A topaz, amethyst, citrine, and onyx powder. Okay, bottle of failing. This stuff is very dangerous. Let me show you. But if you leave it long enough, you'll see everything starts to convert into failing. And it will, if you leave it long enough, basically take over your entire world. But this is only about 2 minutes. And it's spreading rather quickly. If you break down the dirt down here, it's going in every direction. So you do not want to leave this stuff unattended. Okay, so just like with the bottle of fading, the bottle of failing has its own food preference. In this case, it's obsidian. And it churns pretty quick. All right. And out of that, we got Neolite. And now that we've done that, we have yet another ore that is now exposed that you can now find. This one is now at deep slate levels. It's azurite. It's this one right here. I forgot to mention, when you make your first onyx from the shrine, they also now appear in the deep slate levels only. The next step is to create some semi-permeable glass, which is 4 pieces of glass, the 4 pigment, and amethyst shards, and 1 powder inside of the crafting station. So this stuff is really kind of cool because you can surround your entire home with it Make everything mob proof on the inside. And you can walk through it, get in and out, but mobs can't get through it. See, this is oh goodness. I must have missed a block. This stuff is really, really dangerous. Now, on the off chance that this gets completely out of control, like it did over here, the next step in this will help cure it. And that's what this is for. But you need 2 raw azurite, 2 neolith, 4 green pigment, and an empty bottle. And 1 of each of these powders. I just made a bottle of it. And it turns everything back really quickly, including getting rid of the failing itself. Once you get your first bit of neolith from the failing, this stuff now starts to appear in the world at deep slate levels. This is raw azurite. So raw azurite is used in a number of different recipes, including decay way, and then you can refine it down in the fusion shrine. Refined azurite is used in several different types of jewelry, plus upgrades for the enchanting table, and it's going to be used in items for enchanting. So while not pivotally important for progress, it's good to know that you are going to need this, and you're going to need quite a bit of it. The last couple pieces actually start out here in the ocean with this thing right here. What I do know is that this is very spawn specific. They spawn only in the ocean. If you're in warm ocean, cold ocean, deep ocean, anywhere else, I have never seen them. But I find them pretty easily and regularly in kelp fields like this one, in an ocean-only biome. So these things come from plants in the bottom of the ocean, like this one, called the Mermaid's brush. Post-editing Anki here. Initially, I thought these things had a very specific order, but as I played around with it more, I don't know if they do. But I do know once you have all 3 of them, you'll be able to move on to the liquid crystal. To make this, we're going to need pink pigment, yellow pigment, 2 shimmer stone, 2 mermaid gem, and 1 of each kind of powder, and a bucket. Okay, so the next step is to place 4 crafting accelerators on each one of these gemstones in the corner. This might be a bug, but I actually had to upgrade these to the highest level before I would actually get this advancement. So apparently making a bucket of liquid magic and then dumping it on the ground gives you the achievement for having liquid magic. And it also means now I can make an enchanter, which is our last and final item plus altar that we're going to have to do. Thankfully, the components to actually make this is not difficult to get, and it's all right here listed in the book. As much as I gripe about how ill-informed or little information there is on the wiki, the book is actually a very good resource. It's still missing a lot in my opinion, but it's a good resource. And that's what it looks like. Now, this is very fascinating because what this allows you to do is allows you to copy an enchanting book or make your own or upgrade them. So if you have like an efficiency 4, you can upgrade it to efficiency 5, etc. But because of the way this works, it requires a lot more experience. So now that we have the enchanter, we're going to make the enchanting structure. In with the visualizer, we're going to just plop it right over here. Like so. While building this is 248 block places on the little hologram. Bear in mind that each one of these little block places here counts as 8. So I only have 1 water source here, but because it covers 8 blocks, it counts for 8 blocks in the little hologram. To unlock the next bit, you throw an empty book on top of it. The last piece is an enchantment gem. This one is like this, and a gem in the center. Now we have an experience orb. It also needs experience. So in survival, I have 23 levels. If I shift and right click, it drains it into the orb. If I don't shift and right click, it drains it out of the orb and gives it back to me. Okay, so we're going to do this enchantment recipe. We're going to do inventory insertion. A configuration set like this is what the different item bowls are for. There you go. And now we have a book of inventory insertion. Okay, enchantment number 2. And we have to do 2 enchantments because the next step in this is to combine books. The unique thing about this setup is that as you go through and you upgrade books and you copy them to a singular item, the books themselves don't get consumed. So this is my book of inventory insertion. This is my book of Unbreaking 6. You can throw them both on in the item bowls, put the item you want to enchant in here, and it will copy the items over with the knowledge gem. The same thing happens with the books. You throw the book in the center, and it copies the enchantments from these books into that other book without destroying these ones. So if you have a couple of really, really amazing setup, amazing books like Efficiency 10, etc., that you just do not want to get rid of, but you want to put on several, this is the way to do it. It gets really expensive experience-wise, but it is totally doable. That's really about all there is for this mod right now. This is pretty much the end of it. If you dig into the files, there's a whole section in there for a new dimension, which would be pretty cool. I'm not gonna go much further on the enchanting aspect, considering most of it is literally going to be going through and like creating the different enchantments and stepping through them all. It's kind of important that you come to resources and you kind of go through a lot of these as it shows up. Uh, there's a thing with clovers, for example, that I just barely figured out just now. That if you throw a clover on the ground, a regular clover, and you bone mill it, it creates other clovers. And eventually you come up with a 4-leaf clover, which gives you new potion effects, new enchantment effects. There's a lot in this mod that I haven't uncovered. And it's very, very deep and goes many, many levels. But this walkthrough, at the very least, will get you to this point. So you have some freedom to kind of play around with what's here. I hope this was helpful for you. This took a very long time to put together, very extensive. I am excited to see where this mod is going to go in the future, but that's all there is for now. Thank you for coming by, and I hope this was helpful for you. Have a good one.